Greetings to all of the Erudite magicians watching out there on YouTube. My name is Jeff Kowalk, and you are watching Erudite Magic. We talk about all things magic book related in this show, so we're so glad to have you here, whether you're returning or a first-time visitor. We've got a great episode in store for you here. We're going to be talking about Beyond the Fifth Foot. If you haven't already, you need to watch the 5-Foot Shelf of Magic series that I've created to understand what we're trying to do to build out a shelf of magic. This particular Beyond the Fifth Foot episode is going to be about mentalism. And since I've been a practicing mentalist for a number of years, I have a lot to say about this. So let's get going. Here we go. Let me just say up front that if you're new to mentalism, the subject can be slightly intimidating, and some of the people in the field make it more so. We're not going to do that here. I'm going to give you a bunch of resources that you can read, learn, and study so that you can be a practicing mentalist. Not everything is going to make sense right away. You're going to need to give this some time and probably have to couple it with either a mentor who already performed some mentalism or watching some videos of professional mentalists perform on stage. I'm going to try to keep things moving as we go through all these mentalism books because I have so much I want to share with you. Of course, I don't need to introduce Ted to you because you already know who he is if you've picked up Practical Mental Effects or Practical Mental Magic as it used to be known. It's an inexpensive book on Amazon, and it is filled with some of the best things published from Ted Anneman and the Jinx, published posthumously by his friends. You need to have it on your shelf. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Some of the material is slightly dated, but with just a little bit of polish, you can turn some of these older chestnuts into a finely polished gem. I still perform things more or less straight out of this book, and you can too, so don't be afraid to pick up Anneman and do some of your research before diving deeper into the world of mentalism. I don't want to go too far into the video without saying that the granddaddy of all modern mentalism is Bob Cassidy. I mentioned his book, The Artful Mentalism of Bob Cassidy, on one of my previous shelves. Now I know that this book itself is out of print, but you can get a lot of the PDF versions of what's said in this book from library.com or by finding the older booklets as they were published. This particular version was put out by H&R Magic Books and contains some of the most precious gems of performance in all of mentalism. I'm talking about the name and place routine, I'm talking about fourth dimensional telepathy, I'm talking about all kinds of incredible mentalism from this book. There are billet switches, deck work, envelope work, card tricks, but mentalism card tricks, and much, much more. It's going to be hard to find a copy of this, but if you can, do not hesitate to purchase. I'm going to include some links down in the descriptions below. If I find any of these books, I'm going to link to them so that you can find them. But I'm going to tell you right now, one of the best places to shop for these books is going to be at Don's Magic and Books. Don collects older books that are out of print and offers them for sale at very reasonable prices to you, my viewers. And this week, if you follow the link in the description below, it will link you to all of the mentalism related items that Don has on his website, which he is going to give you for an incredible 15% off. And those prices are off of the lowest marked sale price. I'm telling you right now, there are some incredible gems that I have seen on his site, and if I didn't already own a copy, I'd be buying them myself at these prices. So don't miss out. Head over to Don's website, donsmagicandbooks.com, and use the code MENTALISM at checkout to save 15% on anything that's mentalism related. And by the way, even though this channel is about books, it applies to DVDs and tricks. So be sure you check out everything on his site for some stellar deals on mentalism. Back to Bob Cassidy, his book, The Artful Mentalism of Bob Cassidy II Fundamentals, is a great way to start in mentalism. Not only does he share more of his trademark approach to mentalism, he's also going to give you a lot of different effects in this book, including multiple versions of fourth dimensional telepathy, as well as the Q&A. The reason this one is such a good one to start with is because he asks you to envision what your mentalism performance style is, and that's a very important thing to learn early on. Also, in that first set of 5-Foot Shelf of Magic, I talked about Psychological Subtleties by Banachek. These books are very interesting for adding to routines that you already do. There are routines in here that you can perform standalone, but I feel like the material in these is best used by experienced performers who are looking to add that little bit of subtlety or that psychological edge to their performance. Once you've learned some of the basics and have performed them to a point where you're comfortable and your audiences are enjoying them, that's the time to scour the pages of the Psychological Subtleties books to find something that can push it to even that next level. If you want to perform mentalism for corporate audiences, which by the way, this is a great market for mentalism, you're going to want to study the works of Chuck Hickok in his books Mentalism Incorporated, Volumes 1 and 2. These books, as you can see from their subtitle, they're a guide for performing mentalism for corporate audiences. And it takes more of a believable path into the minds of your participants at a corporate show. Chuck walks you through the type of effects you should choose and the order in which you should be performing for audiences, as well as lots of other advice that's well worth the price of the books. If you're serious about performing mentalism, you need to track these down and read what Chuck has to say. He certainly knows what he's talking about and has been doing this for a long time, both as a corporate performer and as the president of the Psychic Entertainers Association. Speaking of the Psychic Entertainers Association, I've done a review of this book already, but it's worth mentioning here. Again, I'm talking about Calculated Thoughts by Doug DeMint. Check out my review up here in the corner if you're interested in learning a lot of detail about this book. But at a high level, I'll tell you that Doug is another very experienced performer and thinker who is a member and past president of the Psychic Entertainers Association and a close friend of Bob Cassidy. This book, put out in 2020 by Vanishing Ink, is a compilation of all of Doug's previously written pamphlets that have been very hard to find and much sought after. There's playing card work, ESP cards, tarot cards, magic squares, billets, the list goes on, but you get the picture. It's available now and has some great advice from a top flight mentalist. Speaking of books I've reviewed and talked about here on the channel, one of my favorite mentalism books of all time is Ted Leslie's Paramiracles. Ted Leslie was a German mentalist who passed away far too soon, but left us with an entire lifetime of practical mentalism from someone who has performed thousands of corporate shows for paying audiences. Sadly, as you can see in my review, this book is also out of print, but copies are still floating around out there, and in fact, I've seen several on Don's website, so be sure to keep an eye out for them. Ted was another member of the Psychic Entertainers Association, and he focused on entertaining audiences more than the specifics of what he performed. So you're going to find everything from card tricks to envelopes that help you switch things in and out, to bending wine glasses. Check out my review if you want to know more, but trust me when I tell you that when you read Ted Leslie, it will change the way you think about mentalism for the better. Another German mentalist, thankfully one who's still with us, is one of my favorite books on mentalism of all time, and it was one of the early releases by Vanishing Ink. I am talking about What Lies Inside by Florian Severin, originally written and released in German and known as 13 Steps to Vandalism. There's all kinds of offbeat, unusual things that you'll see in here that will provoke the way you think about your mentalism. Applying what it says will ensure that not only does everything make sense to you, but it also makes sense to your audiences, who are the ultimate judge of what you're doing. It is out of print. When I reviewed it, it was not, so you could check out my review here, and you can still download the demo chapter, which I think is well worth reading. This book has the best write-up on pre-show I've ever seen, and if you're serious about considering pre-show for your mentalism, you need to read what he has in here. There are lots of fun effects. The book itself is probably one of the most incredibly fun books I've ever seen, and if you're interested, I highly recommend you check out the full review to understand in depth what it offers. Another more contemporary name in mentalism is a UK mentalist, Scott Creasy. This happens to be one of his books, Minimalistic Metaphysical Mentalism, but Scott has been one of the most trusted voices in mentalism in my world, and everything he puts out has gold in it. His thought process and writing is extremely practical, and this is another guy who performs. So everything he's teaching you how to do is going to have an application in the real world. You can buy his books directly from him at his website. Sometimes you can find copies that have been purchased and printed that are now on the used market, or you can go to lulu.com and buy there directly from him through that website where they print the book for you. He also has some digital downloads, and I have found everything he's produced to be helpful in some way, so I don't know that I have a specific recommendation as much as check out some of his work, and if it seems like it's your cup of tea, I promise you'll want more of what he has to offer. If you love mentalism that's relatively easy to do and has a superb plot to the entire presentation, you're really going to like our next creator and author. He's published a number of smaller booklets that are still available, or at least mostly available, and occasionally they go on sale so that you can get them fairly inexpensively. I'm talking about Jack Kent Tiller and his booklets that he's written. Most of them are named for some sort of numerology, duet, quartet, quintet, septet, etc. And each one of the numbers does bear some significance. For example, duet is his two-person mentalism act. So if you are looking to do an act with your significant other, spouse, or another mentalist, then you could do a lot worse than reading this. I've personally found some routines that I would like to start performing with my wife or potentially my son when he's old enough, so there's some really good information here. What sets Jack apart, in my opinion, is the practicality and then the plots that he comes up with. I think a lot of them are super entertaining, and it's not that surprising because Jack himself is involved in Hollywood, so he's used to writing and being involved with really good scripts that help to elevate the entire performance to another level. I don't have a specific volume that I think you should pick up. Instead, I think you should look at what you want in your act. Are you looking for that two-person act? Do you want something that has to do with predictions? Figure out which one of his books looks interesting to you, buy one of them on sale, and see if it's something that you want to continue down that path of learning from a fertile mind like Jack Kent Tiller. There's a trilogy of books by another mentalist who's passed away, Barry Richardson. I'm talking about Theater of the Mind, Act 2, and Curtain Call. I've reviewed Theater of the Mind. You could check that review out here, but the other two are equally as wonderful as the original. Barry was a part-time professional magician and an academic. He was a dean of a college as well as a professor for a number of years. But magic and mentalism was a huge part of Barry Richardson's life, and you can read how he performed for presidents and seminars and conferences all over the world. A lot of what he's published in the pages of his books are from magazines that have been compiled now into individual volumes with updates and new tricks and new ways of doing things, and there is a smorgasbord of stuff in there for everyone. If you've seen Barry perform, he could be a little bit dry, but trust me when I tell you that these presentations are not dry, and with just a little bit of thought, they can be tweaked to be individualized and specialized for you. His work on the A-Can, any card at any number plot, is what kind of got me into that. He has some beautiful work with memorized decks, billet switches, and envelope work, which will surely fool you as well as entertain your audiences. Like I said, if his work really intrigues you, be sure to check out the review. And these books are being republished by Penguin Magic, who purchased all of the rights to the Hermetic Press library of books. So expect these to be in print for a little while, but I would certainly snag a copy while you can. I bought all three of these volumes back when they were kind of out of print or at the tail end of being in print, and it was really exciting to get all three, so I highly recommend you do the same. You will definitely learn from Professor Richardson. Closing in on my last recommendation, this final author is the man to whom I owe my mentalism performing career. Richard Osterlund came and lectured in Greenville, South Carolina when I was a member of IBM Ring 63. I'd already acquired and read 13 Steps to Mentalism, Practical Mental Effects, but I've got to be honest and say it didn't make any sense to me. What I was reading, I thought, how does that fool anybody, or how's that entertaining? Until I saw Richard Osterlin perform in front of my very own eyes. I was blown away by things he was doing, which were already in those books, and I had no doubt read, but I didn't understand how to present them until I saw Richard Osterlin perform them. Richard has performed all over the country and indeed around the world as a professional mentalist, and over the last several decades, he has tipped his hat and shared a lot of his experience with aspiring mentalists everywhere. He has both DVDs and books that are available and explain some of his creations, his thought process, and he even gives you his entire act as he performed it around the world and dissects it, explains it, and gets you ready so that you can be entertaining audiences too. With that said, I highly recommend his Professional Mentalist Field Guide trilogy because they offer so much practical advice in a very small package, easy to read. Each chapter has a topic that's going to be practical advice for you, either teaching you a performance or talking about the kinds of things that go beyond performances, like how do you get ready for a show? What should you wear? Who do you talk to? What kind of fees should you charge? There's all kinds of practical advice here. But beyond the advice, I love Richard Osterlin's tricks because they're so devious, so simple, and so entertaining. In fact, the Perfected Center Tear booklet is the center tear that I perform. And not only that, I think that it is one of the best bargains in all of mentalism because this booklet will teach you not only a center tear that will stand you in good stead for the rest of your life, but also the microphone switch and several other classics of mentalism taught in such a small little spiral-bound booklet. So definitely check that out. You can get it directly from Richard, or used copies show up at places like Don's, so be sure to look there for copies of either his DVDs or the books that Richard has. Whew. That was a really quick run through of all of these fantastic resources for aspiring mentalists out there. So I hope that they will be as profitable to you as they have been to me. If you have specific questions about one of the books or the authors that I mentioned, don't hesitate to drop a comment down below, email me, or drop a message on any of my myriad of social media options. Oh yeah, I want to tell you, I've just launched my website, eruditemagic.com, which I intend to be a community gathering place for all magicians and mentalists who love books and want to talk some more about them. So head over to the website, check it out, and then give me some feedback. What do you want to see from my website? As always, my friends, I really appreciate you watching, liking, subscribing, and giving me feedback on these episodes. As long as I can continue to provide value to you, my Erudite viewers, I will continue to make these videos. Don't forget to check out Don's website. Click that link down below so that you can get 15% off anything labeled mentalism on his website this week. Until next time, all my Erudite friends, keep reading.